This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
All right. You sound like you're excited, Giff. You're like a little yeehaw there tonight?
A little bit. How about this little?
That's a good one. That'll work too. Well, you can just turn it on like the best of them.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, we are not alone tonight. So we had this one planned, and we're all excited about it. We're all excited to share this one with one of our great listeners from home, Jason Gilling, because we know he's excited for this one. But we were reached out to by a fellow member of the podcast community, and who is a giant Dukes fan, and said, "Hey, if you can fit me in, you want to join us." It's kind of last minute, but here he is. He not only watched everything, he's ready to go. He's got a Dukes of Hazzard background behind him on his screen. And so I think this is going to be a good choice. So we have a David Wright. I don't know if I should refer to you as that or Deaf Dave, or if you want to explain the difference there.
Deaf Dave is just the kind of the brand name I put out there on all my podcast appearances. I've been appearing regularly, some of these 80s pop culture shows like Surely You Can't Be Serious and Docking Bay 77. I just appeared recently on Children of the 80s. And I'm enjoying getting to meet other podcasters and reaching out and just kind of building out the community. And so Deaf Dave's kind of my online persona name. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I've been in trouble since, with the law since the day I was born. And I'm ready to talk Dukes of Hazzard with y'all.
Well, and as you probably tell by listening, that he's a Southern boy too. We got a Georgia Southern boy here with us. So what a better choice to have on tonight.
Yeah, born and raised in Georgia, spent about a dozen years in Alabama, and now I find myself in Tennessee.
Pete, your turn.
I was just going to say, like you, a lot of people refer to me as deaf as well. So is that right, Brad?
It's true. Pete has had some ear issues his whole life. So it's a different kind of deaf, but it's okay.
Yeah, but it's still pretty badass.
There's an A in there. Couldn't refer to Pete.
This whole community that we feel like we're hopefully a part of has been growing. It's pretty great. So I really enjoyed listening to you on the Children of the 80s the other day. I'm sure I've heard you on Surely Can't Be Serious before too. It's hard to keep track sometimes, who's who. But I know you have or had your own podcast, and I'm actually really interested that you're actually a writer, which I think is pretty cool. So why don't you tell little people about what they might want to know about you, or where they could even find you out there in the world?
So the best thing to do is go to my linktree/Deaf Dave. I have all my links there. I have written a epic fantasy novel trilogy. It's called Galahad's Doom. It's like sword and sorcery. I tell people it's like Lord of the Rings because that seems to be the big hook everybody understands. But if you're a child of the 80s, and if you were a geek like me, you probably have heard of Dragonlance. That was probably my most direct inspiration. I knew since 1984 that I would one day write a fantasy novel series, and I ended up spending the late 90s, early 2000s developing that story, and then I was able to connect with the indie publishing world, and I was able to get these books out there, and I'm really, really pleased with how they came out. It ended that, when you start, you don't know exactly how it's going to end, and it's not a guarantee you're going to pull it off, and stick the landing. But I really feel like I did. I'm really proud of the work, and I would love for people to check that out. If you like, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance, sword and sorcery, then just go to galahadsdoom.com. It's on my Linktree. Just go to Linktree. I also have produced I did a podcast series with my son. He was 18 years old at the time. We did it last year. It ran about 6 or 7 months. It's called Apples and Oranges, and it's actually a Beatles versus Beach Boys podcast. So we were able to step through the decade of the 60s chronologically and match albums from both bands against each other 1v1. And we did it. If you ever listen to the Surely Can't Be Serious podcast when they're comparing albums, we totally stole their format. We go through track by track of one album, give the background history of all that, do it with the other one, pick, Final Judgment, pick a winner, and then we go to the next matchup. And we stepped through the decade of the 60s, and we ended in 1970, and had a lot of fun with that. I'm a huge Beach Boys deep catalog fanatic. I knew all their stuff going in, but I had never explored the album discography of the Beatles before. So the show is simultaneously me presenting the Beach Boys and making a case for them, and at the same time documenting my own Beatles education. And so we had my eyes open to a lot of stuff, learned a lot of stuff, and just had a whole lot of fun producing that with my son. So again, that's on my link tree also. It's called Apples and Oranges. And I'm a child of the 80s, class of 89, about as 80s as you get. And I have enjoyed delving into 80s pop culture. I talked about Run DMC, Raising Hell, and the Beastie Boys' License to Ill on the Surely Can't Be Serious podcast. I've been on a film by quite a bit. I've talked about movies over there. Red Dawn is the one that pops in my mind right now. Color of Money. It's all pop culture stuff from the 80s. And I'm also a big fan of 80s hip hop, 80s rap. And I've done a couple episodes on them on the Docking Bay 77 podcast. So I'm just kind of an 80s guy. And of course, being from the South and being the age I was, old enough to appreciate the Dukes of Hazzard, their peak seasons were like seasons 3 and 4. For me, that was 4th grade and 5th grade. And I was at the prime impressionable age. And I absolutely connected with this. I lived for this show. I love the Dukes of Hazzard.
I have a lot of questions I'm trying to keep track of here. Let's kind of go one by one with starting with your novels.
Okay.
So were you like an English major or anything, or did you just decide you're going to be a writer?
No, I was not an English major. I majored in television production and journalism, mass communication. But I have always been passionate about the idea of storytelling. I have always been fascinated by the craft, by story structure. What makes a story work and what do you need to make it work? How do you build a 3-act play, you know? And when I decided I was going to write, I really dove into that first. That was the first thing I did, was understanding story structure. And so, and for me, it came together piece by piece. First, I knew a theme I wanted to explore. And then I realized that I had a setting and I had a character. And so the last piece that I was missing was a plot. You know, I knew who and what and why, but I didn't. I mean, you know, I knew who and where and why, but I didn't know the what. And so I spent a few years just developing that, and it just kind of came together. But whether it's through, I'm a huge comic book geek, movie geek. You know, a lot of us are, and I've just been fascinated by storytelling, and I just dove into that myself, self-educated myself basically, and also connected with that independent publishing world and got a tremendous amount of support. You know, the same kind of like positivity that I see in the podcasting community, I was experiencing 20 years ago in independent publishing. And so it all just kind of came together for me. And I've always been a creative type, always did well in creative writing assignments in school, stuff like that. So it just kind of came together for me. You know, I guess, you know, I won't say I was blessed with that talent. It's up to others to decide how successful these novels really are. But like I said, I told the story I wanted to tell, and I'm proud of how it turned out. So if that's a genre that interests people, I say check it out. It'd be awesome. Let me hear from you.
English teacher, and I've always wanted to write a book. I probably am never going to, but if I ever figure it out, I'm going to come to you to like figure out who can help, you know, publish or get, you know, find the right people. Now I have maybe the connection that I would need. So you wrote a trilogy.
Yeah.
Is that it? Are you done? Or are you going to write any other types of books? Is that just you wanted to do that and you've accomplished it?
So I wrote those books mostly while I was working for a documentary production company. So I had a lot of time on the road and I was away from home. So I had a lot of time to kill in airports and hotels. And that's where I was able to be very efficient with my writing. Since then, I now have a regular 9-to-5 and I have a family, and it's a whole lot harder to find time to write. So I definitely have ideas, and I know what I want. I've got more stories to tell, 100%. I absolutely do. Will I ever have the time in my life to actually write them? I don't know. I think what will probably happen is I'll do some short stories that are set in the same world. Although I have another trilogy idea. I just don't know if I'll ever be able to get to it.
Okay, cool. I have a question about the podcast. Do you guys have anything about his books or anything you want to throw in before we move on?
No, go ahead. As far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I love that you did this with your son. So was he like into that music already, or was it hard to convince him? Has he read your books? Like, it sounds like you hopefully have probably a pretty good relationship. I just think that's really cool. So how did you get him to like enter into that with you?
Well, real quick, yes, he has read my books. He does like.
Good, okay.
I've not got my wife to read them, but my
That's like
son.
me in this show. My wife won't listen to this show usually.
But he is a musician. He's actually an incredible guitarist. He heads up a band. He writes his own songs. He can play electric guitar, bass, keyboard, and we have a whole music room here in the house, and it's got he's decorated the room, but it's Pink Floyd, it's AC/DC, it's Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, he educated himself on rock history, and he put himself through music education for the 60s, 70s, 80s. In the 90s is where he landed. I was glad to see him dive into the Beach Boys.
Yes.
Because, that's right. Me. And he was getting into the Beatles before I was. And when he got to the 80s and he was playing Bon Jovi on his guitar, and Guns N' Roses, I'm like, you can stay right there. This is, if for guitar rock, the 80s were the best decade. That's just facts. But he landed in the 90s. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are his favorite group, and he's always jamming to them. And he and I went to a concert last summer, saw them. But yeah, he was already into the music because he was my son. He was more familiar with the Beach Boys, I think. But he had also listened to the Beatles albums and stuff, and he knew what songs he liked. He could play Let It Be and Here Comes the Sun, and he could play all these things. And so I had come to him, I had mentioned the idea to him first about doing this podcast where we do 1v1 matchups between the two bands, because they're actually very similar. They followed parallel paths throughout the decade, started out kind of garage band style. They both leveled up their production. They both dialed it back. These matchups were very natural matchups with each other. And then that idea just lay dormant for maybe a year. And then he came to me. He was 17 at the time. He said, "Dad, that idea you had for that podcast? Let's do it." And I was like, when your 17-year-old son wants to do a project with you, you say yes.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It was, in the end, it was his idea. And so we got started and started recording our episodes.
That's
I got
cool.
one more question on that podcast. So I know all the names of the Beatles albums and everything, and I love the Beach Boys, but outside of Pet Sounds, I don't really know much about albums. So they have about the same amount of albums, because I always feel like the Beatles had a lot more, but maybe I just don't know as much about the Beach Boys, like chronology.
No, the Beatles have a whole lot less.
Really? Wow.
The Beatles have about
They
a
didn't
dozen.
have a long run.
Well, I mean, during that decade, though.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so if you restrict it to just 1963
what I
to
mean.
1970, the Beach Boys had 4 or 5 more albums.
Really?
So there are 3 or 4, I forget the number exactly, that we skip, that we don't, that we have to just decide not to cover on our show because we kept it in a 1v1 format.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do that same thing someday. I don't think these guys are going to do it with me, but if anybody's listening and wants to join me, I'd love to do an REM U2. Same thing. Same similar careers, same time. I grew up with them. That would be one of my podcast ideas right there. So I love that idea of the comparisons.
I might know
Dave,
somebody.
Your son's ever looking
Yeah.
for a great hi-hat player. Brad's also right there on the band. So
That's
throw it
enough.
out there as well.
Well, he's actually we live here in the Nashville area. He's actually going to audio engineering school. There's a record label that also has an academy side to it, and it's state of the art, Nashville recording studio. As you might imagine, it's pretty awesome. And he's a student there and is learning to be an audio engineer. And while he's there, he gets free access, he gets free studio time. So he's putting his band together and teaching them his songs, and they're going to get in there soon and hopefully cut some high quality demos.
Oh, that's cool.
All right, so I've asked a lot of questions. Do you guys have any more questions before we turn it over to Pete here? Or Dave? I've asked all the questions, so.
No, I don't think I do. You
I
kind of
didn't come prepared to do a full interview.
Well, they come to me as he's talking, Pete. I'm listening.
That's good. That's good.
I
He's a
appreciate letting me talk
fascinating
about it.
guy. I like to hear about it.
He is a
All right, well,
fascinating
Pete,
guy.
I'm going to turn it over to you then, because now let's get into the Dukes here.
The first show that I can remember when I was a kid as being absolutely appointment TV, and it was not even close. This was the show that you looked forward to all week, was the Dukes of Hazzard. It was like every week you're looking forward to Friday night. It's when is Friday night getting here? You didn't look forward to Friday because of the weekend. You looked forward to it because of Dukes of Hazzard. And everybody remembers the Friday. My wife and I were just talking about this. Everybody remembers the Friday night lineup as a whole was good because she mentioned Dallas was right after it, which was good. But, you know, as a kid, I wasn't as much into it. And then you had Falcon Crest, which I hated as a kid, but Jenny loved. But anyway, just the characters on this show. I mean, it's a pretty corny show, obviously, but that's kind of the point. The characters, the cars, the action it just appealed to me at that age, like it did for, I think, what's that?
The girl.
Yes, the girl, notwithstanding. But yeah, absolutely. Everything about it just appealed to me at that age because it wasn't like the plots weren't usually that deep, as we were just talking about off air. And it was like enough that you could understand when you were 6 and 7 years old. And it was like you could follow it. You could just enjoy the cars and the action and everything. And it was kind of cartoonish too. It's like watching, we talked last week about Looney Tunes. There's a couple of references that I make in my synopsis to Wile E. Coyote. It's like Roscoe.
I compared it to Looney Tunes as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so it kind of had that vibe to it. It was just, I just loved it. And it was, and we'll get into during the show too, how terrible it was, how much of a disaster the one season when they had Vance and Coy. And it just was not the same. But it was Daisy that kind of kept the show going during that year. But the ratings did tank, but at least it did kind of pick up again after this. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Gifford.
Yeah, this show, again, if I would have been more like Dave's age, I think, it would have been a little bit, I would have been a little bit more impressionable. But even with that being said, like, this show was the show on Friday. Like, it kicked off the weekend. It was what you look forward to. You got cars, you got fights, you've got the bow and arrows and blowing stuff up. You've got a very attractive young lady. You've got slapstick comedy, which for a guy who's, at this point, 6 years old, I'm right into that. And you had the merch. I mean, we all had the big wheel. I had the lunchbox. It was just absolutely everywhere. It was great. It was so much fun as a young kid to see the show on Friday nights. I wasn't a big Dallas guy or Falcon Crest. I was a little too young for it. But this was definitely what I look forward to Friday evenings. And, of course, it was luckily one of the two stations that I was able to get out on the farm. So definitely was a highlight. Watching back this time, I've got a few notes, but at the time it was the best. So
I think you both hit on a big part of it. It was on Friday nights, and so the year that this episode we're going to focus on aired, we're 6 years old. So we're not going out on a weekend. We're not doing anything. We're at home and we're on a farm. But it's also a Friday night, so there's not school the next day. You don't have to go to bed. So it was a perfect timing for us to watch it. And so it was right in that perfect area where we could watch it. I wrote about the merch. I had this thing. It had like a big belt buckle and a big hat and like a radio CB type thing. I'm not even sure who it was supposed to be.
Hold on.
But I've got a picture of me in it, and it's all a Dukes of Hazzard thing.
I would pay money to see that picture.
After we're done.
You actually have that picture of you wearing a Dukes of Hazzard. You're the last person on earth I would picture wearing a big Dukes of Hazzard belt buckle.
It's plastic. It's like a toy thing.
Is it like a Dukes of Hazzard utility belt toy kind of thing?
So I'll find a picture. I'll post it. But I mean, I loved it too. I'm 6. I didn't know a thing about who General Lee was or the Civil War or any of that stuff. But the car was cool. How they got into the car was cool.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
My brother, who was 7 years older than me, he had a Catherine Bach poster on his wall. So like, I'm too young to really care, but like, I can tell, there's something going on there. And watching it now,
Yeah,
wow,
there's something going on.
she is like, I mean, I knew she was good looking and everything, but I mean, I am bitten with her now.
Yeah.
I was a gift for you, Brett. I was really curious to watch this, see like, what am I gonna think of it now today, though? Because obviously, I'm a lot different person than I was when I was 6. But it had such simple stories; they're so easy to follow. So they had a narrator on top of it. If you couldn't follow it, you had a narrator telling you what's happening. The characters are funny. There's action. Watching it through the eyes of a kid, I totally get why I liked it. But we'll talk about what we thought now. It's the kind of show as an adult you got to turn your brain off all the way, because if you're going into it
Yeah.
thinking if you're expecting anything more than that, it's obviously going to be a letdown. I compared it to Looney Tunes. We talked about Looney Tunes last week,
Yes.
and it's like I said, it's like Looney Tunes without the witty writing or the great good music, different kind of music. But anyway, that's mine. I know you mentioned a little bit about your love for it, Dave, but what else do you have for memories or anything else to add for the Dukes?
Well, the Dukes, they had 7 seasons, and for me, it was grades 2 through 8. And it came on as a mid-season replacement in January of '79. That first half season was actually shot on location in Georgia. And so it's a town called Covington, Georgia, and a lot of those locations are still there. And everybody lives in that town's a big Dukes fan. And all the stuff you see in the opening sequence of the show, where they're going through the city
Lord's
blocks and
Nest.
jumping, it was all in Georgia. And then when it got picked up for season 2, they moved everything to California. It was all done on the Hazzard County was the Warner Brothers backlot, which if you're familiar with what Hazzard County looks like, that Warner Brothers backlot, it's the town in The Music Man. It's used in the Gilmore Girls. It's used in all these other.
Actually, I sent a picture to these two because last year in spring break, my son and I went to Universal, and on the first day we took the Warner Brothers tour, and I got pictures of that whole square, and you can see the Growing Pains house, and the whole the gazebo and everything. And when that first shot came over of the town, I paused it like, that's the same place, and it looks exactly the same in 1982 as it did last year. So I totally was talking about. It was so cool to
It's
see
the Growing
that.
Pains house. It's in the background of that picture.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
glad you brought that up.
Warner Brothers, I mean, a lot of studios, but including Warner Brothers, they have these standing exterior sets that they use for whatever. And for the Dukes of Hazzard, and for what we're talking about, that was their Midwest town outdoor set. So just around the corner was where you would find the Gotham City courthouse from Batman '66, for their big city backlot. But anyway, so that was 79 was the opening thing that was shot in Georgia. Fall of '79 is season 2, and it is now based out of California. Season 3 is where it exploded in popularity. So that would be the 80-81 TV season. I was in 4th grade. I was turning 10 in January of '81, and it was the number 2 rated show in primetime. It was, everybody was Dukes crazy by the 3rd season. And so the 3rd and 4th season, they were the best. And we're talking about the season 4 finale here tonight. So we're 3 and 4. That's the golden where Dukes of Hazzard were at their absolute best. I had all the merch. I had the wrist racers. I don't know if y'all remember the wrist racers. It was strapped to your wrist like a watch, but it held a little plastic car that wound up, and you could pull a ramp down. You put your forearm on the ground and pull down the ramp, and when you hit the button, the car would just take off. And I had the General Lee and the police car. My brother and I would have our wrist racer races across the kitchen floor. I had the full Hot Wheels set, and we had the lunch boxes and the sleeping bags. It was just all about the Dukes of Hazzard. This show was made for little boys. There is nothing about this that's not absolutely cool. Whether it's the opening theme song. Are you kidding? You've got muscle cars flying through the air, running away from the police. You have dynamite arrows with compound bows. You're sliding across hoods. You're not even opening your car doors. You get to climb in through the window every time. What is not to love? This is like crack for me. Shoot it into my veins.
Well, and the beauty of it is because we're so young, we don't realize that the car is the car because it comes from, bootleggers running moonshine, even though there's
Right.
moonshine on the show and everything, but the roots of this show comes from bootlegging, and that's why you got the awesome car and everything like that. One of the merch things that I just remembered now, I was Bo Duke for Halloween one year with the hard plastic mask with the slit for the mouth and the rubber band that snapped 2 seconds after you put it on. Like the plastic, I don't even know. I'm sure it was, a yellow top and, whatever. But I do remember being in the Russell gymnasium in my Bo Duke costume one year.
I had the Dukes of Hazzard pajamas that I wore for probably 2 years at least during that age, and it was brief underwear. I can't say they were whitey tighties because they were blue and black.
Yes,
and
I
had the blue T-shirt.
Yes, I had that too. Holy crap!
I think I actually sold mine to you when I was done with it.
That seems a little familiar.
That's why there was a stain on the back. Okay, I got it. Yeah, that tracks now.
Or blue, black, and brown when you got them.
Yeah, so my brother and I would drive my parents crazy because we would refuse to open our car doors. We would want to climb in through the window of the family station wagon every single time. They couldn't stand it. Like my mom couldn't stand it. My dad understood. He kind of wanted to do it himself probably. But when I was like 10 or 11, I fixated on the leather pocket knife holsters that like Bo and Luke had on their belt. I thought they were the coolest thing. And I insisted, I think we were probably at a flea market or something, and somebody was selling these leather pocket knife holsters. I was like, I gotta have that. The Duke boys have them. I gotta have them. And because I explained to my dad, I said, you never know when some moonshiners are going to tie me up and throw me in a Jeep with a rattlesnake in it. You got to be prepared.
Exactly right.
And it worked. I got my leather pocket knife holder.
That is awesome.
I do remember also I had the Hot Wheels cars. I had both the police car, Roscoe's car, and of course the General Lee. And my dad and I would play, on the living room floor because our carpet had, like the lines through it, and those were the roads. And then we would have the little police chases.
Make the lines if they wasn't already in there.
Yeah, no, it was
back and forth.
Yeah, it wasn't like a shag carpet, but it like had the lines. I don't even know how to describe it or what kind you would call it, but
like a sculptured carpet. You can ask the guy who
maybe that's it.
A couch like that too. You could drive the cars on the couch where it looked like they were.
It's
all the fashion or the furniture back then.
I forgot we have a flooring expert here with us on the call, so this is where he comes in handy. But my God,
now I'm out. Okay, you guys have a good night.
So my best friend lived in the country. I was a city boy, but my best friend lived in the country, and he lived on a farm, and he had go-karts and he had dirt roads, and we could have races on the dirt roads in our go-karts. We would watch Dukes of Hazzard on Friday night. We get up Saturday morning, we're racing our go-karts. And the other thing he did, and this is another one of those things that was cool about the show, was I always love the stunts where they're going down the road and one guy climbs outside of the car and he's on top of the car and he's jumping to the other one. Yeah. And my friend had hay bales that were lined up like in a tight grid, like they're up the side of the field. And we would climb on top of these hay bales and we would jump from one to the other, convinced that we were the Duke boys.
Yeah. Well, that is, I'm glad you brought that up because we all grew up in a small town and out on farms, and it did have that kind of feel to it where it's like, obviously it wasn't like as ridiculous as on the Dukes, but it's certainly you could relate to that small town feel, living out on a farm and in a small town where everybody knows everybody. And there's only one cop in town, basically, or two, I guess, in the Dukes, but that was a lot of similarities there too.
Well, and even just like riding your bike, everybody set ramps up, right? I mean, you're always jumping your bike over something, and
absolutely,
damn well, even if you weren't thinking of it, it was inspired by the General Lee jumping over a creek or something, So, yeah, you fly over that ramp and think you were Bo and Luke.
Hey, look, even today, if I'm driving and parked on the side of the road up ahead of me is like some flatbed truck with a ramp pulled down, I'm looking at that thing like, I think I can do this.
Yep.
Yeah, I do too. As I'm driving my Honda Odyssey with the family in the car.
You can do it, Pete. Get it done.
Last year, I was driving my daughter and her friend back from golf practice, and we were going through a light, and it was turning red, and I kind of sped up, and I had never gone through this intersection before, and like we got airborne. There was like a huge dip in the road there, and it was a busy road, and we landed, and they were like, "Oh my god, that was so like, oh my god, I hope my car's okay." It was like crazy though.
50 yards.
50 yards.
Oh, that's
All right. Well, the episode that I chose for this was the season finale of season 4, episode 27, Dukes in Danger. And why I thought that, because we're doing 1982 this month anyway, but I thought this would be a particularly important episode because this was the last episode prior, obviously, to season 5. But in season 5 was when they famously had Vance and Coy on the show, who were absolutely god awful in my opinion, and I think in everybody's opinion, and it just was not the same. And this was due to some contract disputes between the main two actors, John Schneider and Tom Wopat, and couldn't come to an agreement for season 5. But it was Daisy that kind of kept the show going during that season and acted as a good bridge, and then it did come back. But I do have a little synopsis that I'll just kind of run through pretty quickly, and then we'll just walk through the episode like we typically do on our show.
It's funny you keep saying like it was not the same, which I mean I agree. I'm sure, but the biggest complaint that I was reading about the situation is that it was so bad because it was so much the same. They looked like the same guy, like they were trying to recreate the exact same thing. And it's like, if you're going to do this, at least, make it something different. And
right.
So it's just, I get what you're saying and I get it, but it's funny that, the big argument all at the same time was it's too much the same, but of course it's not the same to the fans. It's that whole paradox. It's crazy.
What I keep thinking about, and I didn't have this notes, but when you said that, it kind of triggered me to think, okay, because those were also cousins. Everybody's cousins. There's no brother and sister here. So and one uncle. So how many kids were in the previous generation family that we never got to meet? Right. We never got to meet anybody's parents, just the uncle.
Well, there was also an episode or two where you had another cousin, Jeb Stewart Duke. He rode a motorcycle. I don't know if y'all remember him.
Oh, really?
Throw him in the mix too.
Okay.
The contract dispute that Schneider and Wopat had was over unpaid royalties to them from the merchandising. So they weren't getting their Lunchbox and Hot Wheels money, and so that's why they walked off. And so so they had the number 2 show in prime time, so they tried to keep it going without their 2 stars. So it was hard. It was never going to work, right? Like Coy and Vance those actors did not have the same chemistry. It was just the magic wasn't there. It was never going to work. But like you were saying, Brad, that the mistake that they made was they made the new characters just clones of Bo and Luke. Like literally they took Bo and Luke's scripts and they just were scratching out names and replacing with Coy. They didn't do anything to make these characters unique or different in any way. They put the blonde guy in the blue shirt, right, and the brunette in the yellow shirt, and that was as different as they got. Mm-hmm. And if they had taken the time to develop some unique characters, they may have added to the lore, and there was an opportunity to do something there. It was never going to be the same, but it was a fatal mistake to just make them clones of Bo and Luke.
And I should have watched the next episode. Did they even, how well did they even incorporate into the storyline? It's like, hey, okay, we're here now.
It was very, very minimal. You never saw Bo and Luke in the first episode. They just said that they had left to join the NASCAR circuit. And that was it. And then we were right into the plot that very well was probably written for Bo and Luke, and they just went right into their.
Yeah, to add 1 or 2 lines.
And then the thing is, when they came back, they didn't. So if they had made them different characters, they maybe could have worked the whole thing together and had a different kind of show going too. But when they came back, the 2 guys just basically disappeared immediately, never to be heard from again. Instead of having maybe some crossover episodes or whatever.
Yeah, it was like episode 19 or 20, I think, of season 5. Mm-hmm. That Bo and Luke come back, and it's that pre-titled little teaser segment at the very beginning of the show. Yep. Bo and Luke in their NASCAR uniforms walk into the boar's nest and say hello to everybody, and Coy and Vance were like, "Hey, Bo and Luke," and they walk out the door, and then that's it. There was like one moment in time where you saw all four on screen, and they're never mentioned again, as if they never existed.
Right.
So, but in 1983, there was a Saturday morning cartoon called The Dukes, and it had all of the actual live action cast doing the voices, and you actually get all four Duke boys on the cartoon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep. So here's a fun little thing before you get into your synopsis here, Pete, of this episode. I watched the episode before, and as I'm watching this, I'm wondering if this was production poking fun at the stars of the show, because in the episode before, Roscoe and Cletus go on strike because they're upset with their pay. They see the county next door, their police went on strike, and their demands were met, and so they decide to go on strike. So the fact that you had the second to last episode before these guys walk off the show has a strike in the plot line, I thought was kind of interesting in that. Anyway.
Yeah. So Catherine Bach was going to walk off also. She was ready to join them, and they pleaded with her to stay. It's like, you have to stay to keep the show alive. If you leave, there'll be no show. You know, right. It'll die.
Well, and I would say that I would have hated if she left, but I would have loved to watch her go.
I do wonder what her cousin would have looked like, though.
Yeah.
They would have made a clone of her.
Right.
Taking two of those.
You know, you said they bounced back. They really didn't. They lasted for two more seasons. Like Bo and Luke came back toward the end of season 5. They did 6 and 7.
Okay.
But
the ratings weren't as good.
But the audience never came back.
Yeah.
And so the budget started dropping. And so they started reusing old footage of the General Lee. They started staging jumps with miniatures instead of doing actual stunt work. And it all became very chintzy and cringy, and it just bottomed out. So that's why I say seasons 3 and 4 are the prime seasons, because it took them a little while to figure out who they were, what the show was. And then it was also that pre-Coy and Vance era. So seasons 3 and 4 are kind of like the golden age there.
Yep.
All right. Well, shall I dive in, and then we'll get into the episode?
Let's do it.
All
right. As always, we start with Waylon Jennings singing Just the Good Old Boys as we open in Hazzard County. Roscoe P. Coltrane sets a Wile E. Coyote-esque trap involving a rigged stoplight. Naturally, this leads to a classic Dukes chase with Roscoe crashing into a tree. But the chaos doesn't stop there. A state pen station wagon flips into a ditch, releasing 2 convicts, just as the Duke boys are scrambling to make their mortgage payment, due by 3 o'clock, or they'll lose their farm to Boss Hogg. Eventually, Jesse and Daisy get held up by the escaped cons, and one by one, each of the other characters finds themselves being held hostage at the farm. The Dukes, naturally, confront the criminals. Bo yells, "Go for it, Duke," and it's on. Roscoe is still stuck in the mud, gets a helping hand from Cletus, who, despite his best efforts, is deemed the sorriest deputy to ever breathe. The convicts are still holding the Dukes hostage, but never fear, Roscoe, with his trusty bloodhound Flash, manages to sniff out the criminals back at the farm. After a tense standoff that leads to a wild scene and a characteristic chase, the convicts are captured and the Dukes are able to recover Boss Hogg's stolen money and the mortgage money, and they are able to return it to Boss Hogg, and they trick him by including the mortgage payment with it, securing the farm at the end. It's a roller coaster of Hazzard County hijinks packed with classic Dukes action, ridiculous stunts, and the ever-present threat of Boss Hogg's schemes. Dukes in Danger delivers exactly what you'd expect, pure, unadulterated, good old boy entertainment. There we go.
Very nice. I just love the line in the song, "Fighting the system like 2 modern-day Robin Hoods." That's just what a great line. The song's great. I don't know how far it's going to go in our, fellow podcast bracket over there
for me.
I can assure you that I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah, that line is outstanding, and like that song became a hit for Waylon, and then of course the song he added an extra verse with the line, something about "you never see my face, just my hands." because that was Waylon Jennings, of course, actually playing the guitar in the beginning of the episodes. And then, of course, he's also your narrator for all of these episodes as well. So
The song, by the way, hit #1 on the Hot Country chart, the Billboard Hot Country charts, and even made it to number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. So it crossed over.
wow, 21 on the Hot 100.
This is a time where a lot of country songs were crossing over. It was a big deal at that time, so that's not surprising.
So
Yeah.
the series was created by a guy named Guy Waldron, and in a few years earlier, he had written and directed a moonshine movie called Moonrunners. And it is not at all like the Dukes of Hazzard in the sense that it's not trying to be a comedy. It's not trying to be corny. It's another one of these 70s muscle car moonshine movies like you were getting a bunch of. But there are characters in there named Uncle Jesse and Cooter and Roscoe. And there's a lot of character names. I mean, you've got like Ben Jones in the movie, right? But there's somebody else playing somebody named Cooter. And instead of Bo and Luke, you had one guy named Bobby Lee. And, but you could tell. It was like proto Dukes, and that had Waylon Jennings as the balladeer in that movie. So I'm sure that's how he got the gig. Dukes of Hazzard is basically a retooling of Moonrunners for TV, with the edges rounded off, for make it family friendly. But that's how Waylon ended up, I think, with the gig there on Dukes of Hazzard because he was already connected through Moonrunners.
And how perfect was he though? I mean, just
what a voice.
Again, it just. It's part of what made it appointment TV for me. It's like you look forward to just the intro, and that was what you that was one thing that you always talked about when it came on, and it would just get you excited. And that, along with the shots of the car jumping and everything, and you always picture like Roscoe falling out of the car or like on the ground shooting, and Daisy in front of the boar's nest, and it's just iconic for me.
Yeah.
Daisy in that red bikini in the beginning. I mean, good Lord.
That's why I went back and watched the first episode, and it was because of that, because that scene I saw was in, the very first episode. I'm like, I got to see this.
Yeah.
And it was.
It was.
So yeah,
Right.
the song is instant nostalgia for me, and even the closing credit music is
Yes.
that song, but an instrumental and also kind of a little bit more mellow. And it was so sad, like that. The closing credit music makes me sad because it means the episode's over, and
I know.
I'm gonna have to go to bed now. And it's like, but I would not turn away from the television until the final. The music ends, and then the Warner Brothers logo comes up, and then you hear Roscoe laugh. That I had to hear all of that before I would go to bed.
Well, yeah, it's just fun watching. It's just fun watching the General Lee. It was just driving around around those shrubs or the trees.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's just absolutely the best. Yeah. Just the lead in, just a little. Well, and here was something I had forgotten was the episode preview, letting you know what
yeah.
was
Got ready to
going
be.
to happen in the upcoming episode. I completely forgot about that.
Well,
As
and if we're talking about all the tropes and things they do, then you got to mention the freeze frames, which were like, there's all these cliffhangers before the commercials with the car in the air, something bad's happening. Those freeze frames were just, and as a kid again, those are going to suck you in so much too.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, what's going to happen?
I was just about to mention that the freeze frames going into the breaks. I mean, that it had me. I was hooked.
You were going to get through that 33-minute, the 3-minute commercial break, I should say, as you run to the kitchen, grab something, and then come back. Yeah, they definitely gave you the cliffhanger every time.
We got these prisoners in this episode. And I love it. It's like, first of all, totally a Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor situation. It's like stir crazy here. But I love how they're wearing P's on the back of their thing. I don't know if that's actually common, but P for prisoner on the back of their jumpsuits. And
I thought it was for penitentiary, but maybe
I
not.
thought, that's what I thought it was for.
Okay. Whatever it's for. I just thought
think
they were pretty funny.
If,
And
if
I don't
I'm not
understand.
mistaken,
I can't understand what their goal is. Like they held them hostage for so long, but like
Yes.
when were they going to leave? Like what are they actually trying to do here? Why didn't they go? But anyway,
I don't know. I'm not sure, and I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up, but I think one of them, one of the prisoners was in Northern Exposure. Did you catch that, or am I wrong on that?
Oh,
Because
I know who you're
I
talking
think
about.
he's the older guy in Northern Exposure.
You know what? I
don't
chased
think
that down. You're talking about the white prisoner, right? The white guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
yeah.
the Gene Wilder.
Yeah, the Gene Wilder character. He did look like the dude from Northern Exposure. That was a series that my wife and I streamed last year. It's actually not him.
Oh.
I ran that down on IMDb. He actually had been acting since the 60s, and he quit shortly after the Dukes of Hazzard. But he was just going
Okay.
through the rounds, making guest appearances in primetime
That
TV.
is so funny that you bring that up though, Pete, because I looked him up too, because I'm like, he looks so familiar, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and then he wasn't in anything I knew.
No, it's not him.
But that's the guy I now know, the guy that I was
I could have swore it was him.
Yeah, there is definitely similarity.
See, and for me, Lehman, Richard Pryor, if you will, in this, the acting chops on this guy are amazing, because in here he's, you know, an escaped convict, but I recognized him immediately as a trooper from Blues Brothers. So he's playing both sides of that struggle with law and order. So I mean,
he got a T on the back of his shirt in that one.
For police.
No,
for
it's
trooper?
a little different. Yeah, T for trooper. So for sure, he's got quite a range.
He's one of the guys in Blues Brothers. He's one of the guys in the upside down police car that's spinning around inside the mall, right? And he's always chasing him.
Yes, exactly. The thing that I loved in this episode was how many times did Bo and Luke try to fist fight these guys with guns, and they wouldn't shoot them. And then you've got the whole shootout scene up against the Dukes with bow and arrows, and you can't shoot them. But as soon as it's time to shoot a tire, this guy is a crack shot, one shot and done. I mean, if you're shooting, rubber, this guy has got it down. Lehman was
the exact same notes. I said the same thing. He couldn't hit a person, but he hit every tire in one shot. And then I love too the extension of that scene where is it Bo that's hanging out the car with the bows, not even given the consideration that he could get shot because the guy's shooting at him, but he's wide open. He's not like kind of he's like completely exposed out the window. No doubt he's never going to get shot.
Well, I want to go back to.
Go ahead.
So we're talking about Lehman, right? That's the character's name.
Yep.
He's the black prisoner in the episode.
Yes.
He was in Blues Brothers. That character's name is Stephen Williams. I instantly recognized him. He's definitely one of the troopers in Blues Brothers.
Yep.
Something else he's known for that is not why I know him is 21 Jump Street. He was the cop that led that team on 21 Jump Street. But he was also in the X-Files, and I'm a huge X-Files guy. This is the guy who played the informant Mr. X. I don't know, seasons 2, 3, and 4, something like that. So as soon as I was like, is that Stephen Williams? I looked him up. Yep, it was him. So yeah, X-Files, 21 Jump Street, Blues Brothers. And here we are seeing him pop up in the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, he really went on to some.
Yeah, he had quite a career after this for sure.
And that was Luke shooting the bow. Leaning out the window. But I mean, any episode that involved dynamite arrows, I am there for it. That's like the coolest thing ever.
Can I make 2 points of dynamite?
By the way, the trajectory. Can we talk about the trajectory of the arrows?
Very high.
My God,
he's too high. It's too high.
From a
hold on.
I'm not even sure about the physics of this, but when you're in a moving car, are you able to get? If you shoot an arrow like that high of a trajectory, you're going to go past it, aren't you?
The arrows are underneath the arrow right of the car, so you've already got that going for you.
That's what I'm not sure about.
So 2 things on the dynamite. One, evidently dynamite in Hazzard County doesn't need to be lit. It just explodes on impact, which is the whole point of dynamite, is that it was stable. It needed to be lit with a fuse. And then 2, I don't know how smart of an idea it is to hold somebody at dynamite arrow point, because if you let go of that arrow, if you let it loose, you are blowing up with the guy you shot it at 5 feet away.
This is now we are getting into some Wile E. Coyote shit here.
Mark down Dynamite Arrow Point as the name of a song for your band.
Yeah.
I mean, the weight of the dynamite is going to make the arrow go absolutely nowhere, right? It's just going to fall right at your feet, right? So, but if you are Luke Duke and you are in Hazzard County, yes, you can do this. The physics work for you. It's
physics do work out.
Sure. It's a little bit of that Duke shuck and jive.
Yeah. So watching this time, of course, I loved this show. As we said in our last episode, any one of the three of us would have picked the Dukes of Hazzard as our number one show of the year. Loved it. But watching it now as an adult, this is just the dumbest show.
It's much cornier than I
But
remembered.
this
It's
is what
so
Brad said
corny.
earlier, though. You got to turn your brain off.
You
It's
absolutely-
still amazingly fun. I had a ton of fun watching it.
Yep. So you've got the highlight for me still, and it probably, I don't know if it would have been when I was a kid, but the highlight for me is Roscoe. The man cannot
Oh,
get
yeah.
through a sentence without making some funny little noise, interrupting himself. He's giggling and everything. It's just, he is so great, and I
To your
love
point, Gifford, about how corny it is, the thing that kind of struck me was, okay, yeah, as a kid, for sure, I loved it.
Mhm.
But this was the number 2 show the season before after Dallas. So it's not just a kid show. The whole country's watching this. And so as corny as it is, it's working, which kind of
Mhm.
shocks me looking back. Because it
But
was
a
cornier
lot-
than I remembered. I mean, it's over the top. The other thing I compared it to besides Looney Tunes was the Brady Bunch. There's the scene where Boss Hogg ends up in the big hay pile, and they go, and the line, it's like an Alice line, little early for Boss to be hitting the hay, and it's like, this is so lame, my God. The jokes and the puns, it's like, wow.
what I
A
love
lot
how
of shows were
people
corny.
in
Though.
the
Like,
hay pile right next to a major road in Hazzard County, just going at it for some afternoon delight. I mean, that's outstanding. They're talking about shucking and jiving. Lord.
I want to hang some respect on Sorrel Book and James Best as
oh God, yes.
Boss Hogg and Roscoe. That
Good
has to
team.
be one of the great comedy duos of all time.
Yes, they're like Abbott and Costello.
It's fantastic. It's Abbott and
Yes.
Costello. You know, it's Kermit and Fozzie. You know, it's Ernie and Bert. I mean, I don't know. It's Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. It's all the great comedy duos. They're right there. And in the way you were describing Roscoe's character and the way his weird laugh and his interruptions, what a unique take on the character. Like no one can imitate that. It was pure James Best. I mean, I've tried to do the Roscoe voice. I can't do it. I don't know.
Well, and the
Also,
funny
by the
thing,
way, Sorrel Brook, who played.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I
was
saw a thing that when he started the show, his last name was Good, but he did it so well that they changed it. Best. I mean, yeah, like that.
Okay, that's a
Oh my
good
God.
Dukes of Hazzard joke right
That's a
there.
good Dukes of Hazzard joke. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorrel Brook, who played Boss Hogg, actually was much more intelligent than he came across on the show. He is Yale and Columbia educated. He spoke several languages. He was a little bit overweight in real life, but he actually wore a fat suit on the show to achieve his hefty build.
Yeah.
He's
So,
great.
Just thought that was kind of funny.
And in this episode,
uh,
you know, when he realizes that the Dukes missed their mortgage payment and he just told the bank to close, he starts dancing around in his office. That
Mhm.
dance just slayed me. That was hilarious.
Yeah, mine too. And he did it twice. He did it at least twice in the episode.
Well, and putting this all
My one
together,
issue with him being so happy is he starts singing his song, you know, Old Boss Hogg has a farm. He's closing on the property. He doesn't get to keep the chickens and the pigs. That's not part of the mortgage, right? Like they're gonna vacate the property with the other belongings. So I thought that was a bit odd.
speaking of the comedy team and then the cartoony, it all came together in the barn there. It's like, okay, he's milking a goat. Why? And then, of course, it leads to spraying the milk all over Roscoe's face. It's like that was maybe the low point when it comes to like.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's examine that for a minute because he's so hungry. He's milking goat's milk, and he just cracks an egg in there, and he's got a milkshake.
Right. Well, what I love is right before that is
Sounds
Boss
absolutely
talking about how he's talking about how hungry he is, and then he goes, "Oh, there's a goat," and Roscoe goes, "Are you gonna eat it?" No, he's gonna milk the goat, but just that quick delivery of Roscoe going right to Boss Hogg is gonna dig into this goat is so great. You talk about Abbott and Costello with Boss and Roscoe. You put Roscoe and Enos or Roscoe and Cletus together, and that's Three Stooges, because it's constantly hitting one another over the head or something. Just kind of, drop the chain on his foot after he helped. It's just absolutely wonderful to see the interplay between the different groups.
It's classic comedy. The characters are great. The show's wholesome. It's just a happy time. I mean, it charmed the whole nation.
The part that made me laugh the loudest, I don't think was supposed to be funny, but I don't know if anybody caught this or noticed it. When they're having their kind of shootout, and Lehman, he jumps behind the bales, but like he jumps straight up in the air and then just kind of belly flops straight down. Yeah. It was the worst looking escape jump I've ever seen, and that was the part I laughed out loud at that one. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I did notice, and thank God for the Dukes, not a lot of fences in Hazzard County. A lot of free range cattle, so you can just take off literally cross country and not have to worry about running into any fences. Because, I mean, I see cattle around here, and if they're out, like I slow down. No, these cows are right next to the road, and you're buzzing past them as fast as you possibly can. I thought that was a little strange. So,
did anybody notice? Obviously they're not rich or anything. I don't know, but like this house it's pretty run down. It looks like even for 1982. But I thought the weirdest part was when they made Boss Hogg call Cletus from that bedroom. Did you notice that bedroom? It's like a teenage boy's room. There's like flags and pictures of cars and posters on the wall. And I'm like, what room is this? What?
That was actually pretty neat though, because it may be the only time we see that bedroom in the entire series.
Well, yeah, I wondered about that.
The posters on the wall are Easter eggs to previous episodes, like the carnival of whatever it was. It was the racetrack episode where they were jumping. It was like a demolition derby. I don't know. I remember that being an episode. So I think there are fans that are truly hardcore about the series that I can't hold a candle to, that like are all over that stuff. They recognize all that. So it was kind of
I like that. That's good. I was wondering who sleeps in that room though. That's the part that got me.
It did look like a young child's bedroom. That's for sure.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I read up on was Boss Hogg would never kill anybody, even though there's plenty of times where he puts somebody up with a gun against the Dukes. But that was one of the cutoffs, was he would never actually kill somebody, because they didn't want to make him, obviously he's the heavy in the whole series, but you don't want
anybody ever die on this show. I would think that's not something that ever would happen.
I don't think anybody ever got.
But I mean, he's always up to something. He's always stealing. He's always conniving. He's always doing whatever he can to enrich himself. But that was kind of one of the big things. But oh my God, how happy is this guy to foreclose on this farm? I mean, he's doing a dance. He's singing a song.
Well, it's because he hates the Dukes so much, and he's just looking to get the Dukes. And this is finally his chance.
Well, and that's back to Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Like, it literally is him trying to come up with every scheme in the book to get them off the farm.
So did I miss something? Why are they turning their mortgage in why did it take the very last minute and they haven't paid anything yet? There wasn't anything explained.
It's their monthly payment. It's just
but they wait until the second it's due. Yep. Like they can't go earlier in the day. Okay, whatever.
No, they got chores. They're choring. There's a lot going on out of it.
The money is tight. It's they have to wait until they have the money to make sure that they pay it. Sometimes
they're busy hitching curves and flattening hills. But
right.
I think what I picked up in this episode is this was their final mortgage payment. Like, this was going to pay off the farm.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
I didn't get that one.
They didn't make a big deal about it, but I think that's what I caught. So of course, Boss Hogg is going to hold them to that very last payment on, right to the second.
And I think they did allow themselves plenty of time in the day, but then all these shenanigans came up and they got held up, and that's why they were delayed after the 3:00 deadline. So it's like, if the payment is due on the first of the month, they're usually going to go on the first sometime during the day. But they got delayed.
Yeah, we pay our mortgage on the first of the month. Of course, we just have to hit a couple buttons on the phone, and it's paid and good to go. So
I don't even hit any buttons. I just have it automatically taken out.
Oh, must be nice.
Fancy.
So
So
one of the other lines that I loved from this episode, it comes from Roscoe, and it's after he gets spun around and he has to go chase them for whatever reason. He's in reverse, and he's
He's a really good reverse
So-
driver, by the way.
really, really good. And he's talking to himself, and he is just loving it because he's in hot pursuit. I mean, that's his favorite thing to do. Ooh, hot
Yes.
pursuit. And he goes, in reverse. I don't care. Like, I'm going to catch, like, he was giggling at himself that he's going to catch the Dukes in reverse. I don't care. And it's just, oh, he's so funny, just how he's excited. And then, of course, after he does wreck, he has his, usual line. It's a horrendous crash. I know I used that one on more than one occasion when I was a kid, and I would, fall off a bike or whatever when I was.
We really here though find out how much of a dick that Roscoe is, right? Because the Dukes go back, they help him. They're helping him, right? They help him
That's
get
really
his
nice
car
of them.
out and everything. They're really nice to him, and then he still wants to arrest him. Where do you guys think you're going?
He got a citation for running a red light. God, he was so
Yeah.
proud of himself.
The red light that
the
he
police
propped up, and after they get helped,
Oh my
or
God.
after they help him out.
yeah, I like his hound dog flash. Yeah, they had to give
Oh,
him the hound
Basset.
dog so he have somebody to talk to in the car.
I like that
So,
Basset Hound too.
Who never
Yeah.
did anything except in this episode, he actually did sniff out the bad guys that
Yeah.
were in the pantry.
yeah, Flash got an action scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what a great name, right? Because this dog isn't going anywhere fast. So
The old slow dog.
it's like calling the fat guy tiny. It's just outstanding. And of course, the other great thing about this episode is that you do get, for the most part, except for Cletus, at one point you have all these characters in the same spot. Cooter comes out to drop off Dixie, so he's in the scene with everybody, and it is kind of sweet to see Boss Hog and Roscoe at the dinner table, acting nice, trying to get people out the door so they're not caught up in all of this. So it was nice to get everybody together in the same room, which was cool.
I
Kind of
felt
like
sorry for Cooter, man. He was hinting so hard that he wanted to eat some food and be invited to the dinner table, and they
And then
just
on top of it, gets a kiss on the lips from Daisy, so that really threw him for
Yeah, I don't feel bad for him, man.
yeah, it's a net positive for him.
right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that was a little bit of a letdown for me, I told you I watched the episode before this, and then I watched this episode. Neither of those episodes have the signature clothing part that Daisy would wear. And we have, of course, I'm speaking of the Daisy Duke shorts. So I will pose this to you guys. Can you think of another person or a character that an article of clothing was ever named after? Not like a region
It's ahead of
or anything like that, but an actual person or character that a piece of clothing was named after.
Closest I can think of, I think of the Rachel, which is a
I
haircut.
was going to say the
clothing.
same exact thing, Pete.
Yep, that
like
was
we're
the
sharing
one,
a brain.
That's not an article of
No, but that
clothing.
was the first thing that jumped into my mind as far as
Mine too when I came up with this question. So I did a little research. There's only two things that I could find. So the Prime Minister of India in the mid 1900s, Jawaharlal Nehru. There's a
I was
Nehru.
gonna say this
jacket.
one too, Gifford. You're stealing it from me.
Oh, you got that?
Yeah.
You're wearing one right now. It's a jacket, short collar. That's named after him. The other one that's probably more famous, the leotard, is actually named after a mid 1800s French man named James Leotard.
Okay,
But those-
I got one.
Okay, what do you got?
So it's maybe not an article of clothing, but the Winnie the Pooh or the Donald Duck, where you're only wearing a shirt,
Yep. You're
nothing on the bottom.
Yes,
Does that
which
count?
you're
That's
famous
good.
for.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Donald the Duck, Brad Sorensen. Those are the three
You want me to
three
stand up?
people that's named after, for sure. That's pretty solid. I like that. That's good.
Well done, Fred.
What's funny is when Donald Duck comes out of the shower, he's got a towel wrapped around his
Yep.
waist. But when he gets
That's
dressed, he's just wearing a shirt.
Yeah, but he's always half naked, basically. which is the way I prefer to go through life.
And I just found out GIF is Donald ducking us right now. I don't need this. I don't need you to stand up in the camera shot for me.
This is an audio only podcast, and you are welcome for it, folks.
I do wonder about this show. So you watched the one before. I watched the first episode.
Mhm.
I didn't find it nearly as cartoony. It was good.
Right.
Like I liked it. Yeah, it had, a lot of the same, of course, themes and like action and things, but I didn't find it nearly as cartoony. So I'm wondering like how fast it because shows are going to do that. How fast did it go that way? When did
Okay.
it maybe consider jump the shark? If well, I suppose Coy and Vance could be that, I guess, but like maybe David knows how did that progression go? It looks like you might have something to say.
Yeah, the first season is, like I said, just a half season. It was the spring of '79. Those were the only episodes shot in Georgia, and this was him adapting his Moonrunners movie to television. And so that first half season there is not the show that we know and love. It's a little bit rougher, a little bit edgier. It's not as cartoony. The characters are cussing a little bit. It doesn't have those edges rounded off all the way. And when they got picked up, moved production to California, starting with season 2, it was already, kind of cartooned out by that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
But tonally, it was absolutely different in that first half season.
Yeah, it didn't feel totally. I mean, like a totally different show, but I could tell it was a little more serious. It didn't have quite the same, the kid kind of stuff. Probably the stuff that would appeal to a kid wasn't quite as over the top. So that makes sense.
Can we talk about the CB handles and how great those were?
Shepherd of lost sheep. Shepherd of lost sheep.
That's right.
Yeah, it's fantastic. One of those things, one of these elements of the show that appealed to young boys, right? Were the CBs. Love the CBs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get any real good CB action in this episode, but man, that was a part of my childhood. We had to have CBs.
Shepherd was Uncle Jesse. Lost Sheep was Bo and Luke, right? And Daisy was Bo Peep.
Bo Peep.
Oh,
And
did Cooter have one?
Crazy Cooter.
Cooter coming at you. Yeah.
Crazy Cooter coming at you.
Well, and I
I had my life once or twice, so not
2 or 3 months ago. 2 or 3 months ago, speaking of all the CBs and all the similar stuff, we went and watched Smokey and the Bandit in the movie theater, and that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go and see it on the big screen, and just because I hadn't seen it in so long. But yeah, when you're talking about CBs and chasing, and that movie obviously had to be an inspiration on the show a little bit, I would think.
Well, Moonrunners predates Smokey and the Bandit, but if Smokey and the Bandit doesn't happen, I don't think Dukes of Hazzard gets greenlit. CBS was like, oh, that's kind of like Smokey and the Bandit. Yeah, let's do that show. Kind of thing.
Point.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
We're talking about, like Abbott and Costello and Stooges and, Smokey and the Bandit being inspiration for this show. One of my favorite shows of all time is Seinfeld. And there was a particular episode, and watching this back, I wondered if Dukes maybe inspired the episode where Jerry had Golden Boy and Baby Blue for
t-shirts.
Because Bo is always in yellow, he'd be Golden Boy, and then you got Luke usually in a plaid baby blue shirt. So
I guess it's no.
Your guess is no. Come on, let's play with that a little bit. I like to think
it's a hell of an observation, though.
We're huge out on Long Island, back in the day.
Hey,
that was the #2 show in the nation, for crying out loud.
So, John Snyder played Pa Kent on Smallville, and there was an episode of that where Tom Wopat made a guest star appearance, and he rolls up on the Kent farm in a 1969 Dodge Charger. It's solid blue, but it's clearly, big nod to Dukes of Hazzard.
I got one more question, and maybe anybody can answer it. I'm sure Dave will have an answer. Because I don't remember, all that much, but to me, John Schneider, that's Bo, right?
Yep.
Okay, just get confused. He came off as the dumber cousin, and Luke was definitely the straight man. Is that consistent throughout the show, or is that just what I noticed in this episode?
that is my impression of the characters. That's largely consistent through the whole show. Luke was the brains who always came up with the scheme.
Yeah, the brains.
And John Bo was generally speaking, he was the driver. He was the default driver on the car.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever seen
younger.
Luke drive. Luke never drives.
Oh no, Luke drove. He
Well,
definitely
they drove in this episode, didn't they?
Yeah, he did. And he drove a little bit, but mostly it was Bo. Luke was the guy that was climbing out on top and jumping to the next car.
That's right.
Yeah, and John was only 18 when he did the what do you call it? Oh my God, why can't I audition? And he lied about his age in order
to lie about his age.
He's that young. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. What was funny is he went into the audition and it was like dirty jeans and cowboy boots. And when he sat down in the producer's office, he just kicked back, put his boots up on the producer's desk, and opened a beer. And was convinced the producer that this guy was the real deal. He was a Duke boy, and so he got the job. But it turns out it was all an act. He's actually from New York.
Yep.
So he got it at age 18.
Which
he's a good actor.
Great of an actor he is. Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. There were other contract disputes over the course of the series. For a while, James Best was not on the show. He was replaced by Dick Sargent, who we know from Bewitched. He left because the conditions on the set for the actors were terrible, and he was complaining about his trailer or something like that. So we have a period of time where we don't have Roscoe. We have Dick Sargent, whatever his character's name was. Enos was not on the show for a while, and it was replaced with Cletus. But that's because Enos had a spin-off show of his own.
I remember that.
Enos.
Remember that?
And there was a period of time.
Remember this?
Yeah.
By the way, remember this?
Yep.
This was there. I'm going to describe it for our listeners. If you don't remember, it was Enos, and he had a partner.
Right.
And I don't remember the partner's name,
Turk.
but they had what's that?
Turk. His partner was Turk. Enos and Turk.
Okay. But their little shuffle, I guess, or their high five was one of them would have their hand out flat, like he's going to receive a high five, and then the other one would have a thumbs up and slap it down. That was the high five thing.
Yep.
And that's what they would cut into commercials with.
Yeah.
And I think it was in their intro too. I remember that show very well.
There was also a period of time where Ben Jones walked off the show. He played Scooter. And so just like they would later do with the Duke Boys, they replaced him with a clone character. And I forget, he was like Cooter's cousin or something. And literally they just scratched out Cooter's name, put this new guy's name in, and just kept the show going. But that replacement Cooter was actually played by, I think his name is Ernest Lively or Ernie Lively. And that's actually Blake Lively's dad. Was the replacement Cooter on Dukes of Hazzard.
Huh.
So Dick Sargent was Grady Bird.
Grady Bird, that's right.
That's who came in, and then, oh golly, I thought I had him here. Go ahead.
I think Ernest Lively is his first name. Yeah.
Just trying to find him here.
He was actually an acting coach in Hollywood. He taught a lot of people we know acting classes, but he's actually Blake Lively's dad and maybe Robin Lively's dad too. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, he did 5 episodes. He's got a few different characters here: Longstreet, Davenport, Clyde the Guard, and Dubrow Doolin.
Davenport was the mechanic because Cooter's last name was Davenport. So,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah,
that's right. Excellent. Well, you guys got anything else on this episode in particular?
Ready to draft? I think I got all my stuff out.
Oh, I'm excited for this. This is going to be a good one. Again, a broad category, so that lends itself to some interesting choices and a lot of things that I didn't even think of. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys came up with. Pete, tell us what we're drafting tonight.
The draft is vehicles in pop culture, like music. Well, if you found a music one, maybe a music video, I don't know, but mostly it's going to be TV and movies. But any vehicle. The Dukes of Hazzard, of course, General Lee was as much or more of a character than any of the actual actors in Dukes of Hazzard. So I thought this would be a good one. So the first thing you think of is cars, but it can be any mode of transportation. It could be a boat. It could be a truck. It could be an airplane, spaceship.
We're going to hear some good ones in here, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. So I, however, with my first pick, I have to take what we just talked about. I'm going with the General Lee.
All right. So our order
And
tonight, we have 4. We're
gonna
gonna have a
say-
snake draft. So Pete, of course, because he's, this is his pick for the month. He'll go
Yeah.
first. We're gonna have our guest star, Deaf Dave, go second, followed by me, and then Brad will have the 4th and the 5th pick.
2 in a row, baby.
Yep. So Dave, General Lee has already flown off the board. You are up with yours.
Good one. That's a good one, Gifford. Did you do that on purpose?
All right, so I got quite a few here that I like, and because of how this draft is going to work, I know that there are some darlings here that I am going to miss out on,
Mhm.
and I hate that. But if I choose to look at these as in universe, right? We're not talking like real world, like replicas that I'm actually going to drive around, but if we're talking like in universe,
Movies and TV, baby.
right?
That's
So
the universe.
as cool, and I can name some of these, but I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. But as cool as some of these are, I can't get past a time traveling DeLorean. There's no way that I'm passing that up. I have to take the DeLorean from Back to the Future.
Well,
That's my number 2.
That's the first thing I wrote down. The DeLorean, to me, honestly, I mean, I love our subject tonight, Pete, but to me, the DeLorean is the pick for sure.
Okay, Gaff, I'm curious what you're going to take because I got 2 ready here.
There's so many good ones. I went through my list after I figured out my draft position, and I did pick my top 3. Little disappointed I did not get the DeLorean, but I am going to go with the 1983 Wagon Queen family truckster LTD Country Squire from Vacation.
I thought maybe I knew you'd have it, but I thought maybe you'd have one that you really wanted more.
There's a lot that I really, really want, but I have to take that one.
Family truckster off the board. I'll take the Anaric Blue sports car.
Sports wagon, yes.
Sports wagon. Okay, well, if that's off the board, God, I got like 4. I wonder how many of these are going to last. Okay, well, I'm going to take, this isn't like my most exciting one because I got more fun ones to pick, but I feel like I have to take the Batmobile.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that next.
Can I ask, which are all the Batmobiles off the board now?
Yes, all the Batmobiles, but I would like to ask you if there's one that stood out for you, Brad.
Well, my favorite Batman is 89 Batman, so I'm thinking that's the one I'm taking right there.
Okay. I put the
Now,
Tumbler.
maybe could you still take, though, like, you could take, like, his Batwing, I suppose, right? The flying one.
You could.
But the Batmobile is off the board.
I would have taken 66. The 66 Batmobile was second on my
cool
draft
one.
board. Yeah.
All right, well, speaking of flying,
Yeah.
I don't know if Pete's got this on his board or Gifford, but I'm going to take it now so I don't lose it because this is my favorite one on here. I'm taking the mail plane, the Tubman 601 from
I did not have the Tubman.
From what?
Three Amigos.
Oh.
The mail plane.
How could you
See its
tell?
little balls?
It's got little balls.
That's our favorite movie of all time here on the show, so that was a big.
I'm not criticizing you, Brad, but I really feel like you should have taken that one later in the draft because I think it would be available. I never even thought about that.
I didn't have it on my board. No, I didn't have it on my board. All right, that is a great pick. All right, I am gonna go. Like Dave said, do we need to be in our universe? Well, this is still in the universe. It just comes from a galaxy far, far away. I'm going with the Millennium Falcon.
That's a good one.
Nice.
Yep. I should have thought of that one. I would have put that on there.
Dave coming out with his number 2. What do we got here?
All right. I hope that some of these others are going to still be available for me later. But if it's 1982 and I can pick any car I want and I have an opportunity to kick back in the driver's seat and play a game of Pitfall on my Atari 2600 while my car drives for me, then I'm taking that opportunity.
Yeah.
Even if he's going to talk back to me a little bit, I'm going to have to put up with it. I'm taking Kit from Knight Rider.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah,
right.
that was
Like to play
the
Pitfall.
third one I wrote down was Kit. Because it's iconic. I would like to know whether or not if Pete or Brad owned Kit, if Kit could have played double dribble against them while
That's
in
a
the
good.
car.
Yeah, that's a good
That
question.
would have been their favorite thing ever.
It has 2 T's, by the way, right?
Yes.
KITT,
Yeah.
Night Industry
Yep.
2000.
Yes. Thank you
Oh,
very
it's
much.
an acronym. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
All right,
the
Pete,
sh-
you got 2 picks.
so the show was developed by Glenn Larson, who also developed Battlestar Galactica. So there's fan theories out there that the Cylon light back and forth on their face
Uh-huh.
was a technological descendant from the Night Industry 2000 technology.
Wow. That is cool. I like that.
And
All right.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
You had
I'm
a point
good.
to add.
No,
All right.
I had
2
something that was
picks,
wrong.
Pete.
I am going with my next one. It's a 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor ambulance, Ecto 1, the Ectomobile from Ghostbusters.
The Ectomobile.
Yep. That is a great one.
Hey,
Where is
so-
this on the list?
Get the tricked out version from Ghostbusters Afterlife.
There you go.
Right.
I've got a few good ones here, but I am now going to take a 1963 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yep. That's a great one.
If you had access to a car like that,
What would you do?
would you return it right away? I didn't
Me
think
neither. Yeah.
We'll drive it home backwards.
so. Take the miles off.
Oh God! Don't get Roscoe to drive it back home.
Yeah.
No, he might be the one you need. I don't know.
He's the one to do it.
All right.
No, he ended up in a tree for crying out loud.
He was so good for so long. Eventually, something's going to happen. That
Well,
wasn't
to
his
be
fault.
fair, it ended up in a tree anyway, so I guess it ended up in the same spot it would have.
Exactly.
All right. So it's on me.
Yes, sir.
I said,
Yep.
we've picked cars so far, right?
Yep.
I have
There's the Millennium Falcon was
in a
taken.
Millennium Falcon.
Okay.
And a Tubman. I have a plane.
That's
Yep.
right. That's right.
Yep.
All right. My bad. Well, I'm going
Oh,
to go
yeah.
with a motorcycle.
Mm.
But if I'm picking a motorcycle, I'm picking a motorcycle that drives at light speed and makes 90-degree angles.
Ooh, from Tron.
I'm taking the light cycle from Tron.
Yep.
Oh, I have that on my list.
Oh,
Very
we don't know.
good.
Do you have the, what were they called in Flash Gordon? The rocket cycles.
Right.
I'll get another one.
You got to fly blind on a rocket cycle.
If we had a different Dave on the podcast tonight, I guarantee you that would have been a #1 overall pick.
Yep.
Oh, that's outstanding. Okay. Well, do I take this now or do I wait till later? Well, I've said for many years, for me, this is minute for minute the funniest movie ever.
Ah,
So I'm going
there
to
it
take
is.
one of the iconic vehicles from this movie. I'm going with the 1980 Ford Econoline turned into a sheepdog in Dumb and Dumber.
That's a good one.
That was maybe going to be my next pick. But now I don't have that on the list, so it's a little easier to narrow it down. First, I'm taking also involving a dog, or actually more specifically a Mog. I'm taking the Winnebago from Spaceballs. It can take me throughout the galaxy.
Yep, that's a great one. I got that one.
For my first one, and for my second one, I am taking 1 second here. For my second one, I am going to take from a great show we've discussed on this show that you could listen to our episode on, the stair car, the Bluth stair car from Arrested Development.
God.
Thank you.
That's great.
Oh God. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to catch myself here. All right. So, what else do I have highlighted here that has not been taken?
Are we going to be doing honorable mentions?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Anything that's left over, we'll run through.
every single one.
Okay.
All right. I am going to go with, I'm going to go back to my younger days here. Something that I always wanted. I loved it. I got it for Christmas one year. I'm going with the Freightliner FL 86 Optimus Prime
Ah,
edition.
Nice.
I'm going Transformers.
Even think about that.
that was gonna be my next choice.
Was it? Nice. I feel
Yeah,
better.
I was considering it.
All right, Dave, what do you have on your fourth pick?
Okay, I'm gonna go deep cut here. I don't know if y'all be able to follow me or not. You're a few years younger than me, so this might fall flat with y'all, but hopefully there's people out there that are catching this. Are you familiar with the imported cartoon late 70s from Japan called Battle of the Planets? Do y'all know Battle of the Planets?
No.
I not.
Okay, well, look it up. It's very cool. It's like basically a superhero team. They all have like bird themed outfits on, right? Everybody has their own weapon. Everybody has their own vehicle. Like one guy has a race car, one guy has a jet plane, one has a motorcycle, one has like an all-terrain rover. But the team gathers in their spaceship called the Phoenix, and the Phoenix actually incorporates all of these other vehicles into it.
Ooh.
So they're all together on board, but if they have a mission and they need to disperse, one runs up the ladder and gets in his jet, and one goes down and gets in his car, and like they all go different ways, right? So you get like 5 vehicles in one with the Battle of the Planets. Phoenix is the name of their larger starship. Anyway, it's known by a couple of different names. In Japan, it was called Gatchaman, but it was I know Casey Kasem was one of the American version of one of the voice actors in the American version. So there are people my age that love Battle of the Planets. Just Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm waiting for a good live action adaptation because it would be awesome.
You want to get specific with all the descriptions of these cars. I don't know that I'm gonna have enough room to type it all up and get it in a picture to get voted on. Some of these are very detailed.
Sorry, I made that tough for you.
Closing out now.
I'm up for 2 picks now, right?
Yeah.
Your last 2 picks.
All right. My next one is very iconic to the series and just a freaking great series. I'm going with the RV from Breaking Bad.
Oh, I did not have
That one
that.
either.
Which I think that's a Winnebago, isn't it? So we've got 2 Winnebagos selected.
Wow.
Well, and the Winnebago from Spaceballs is modeled after my pick, the Millennium Falcon.
That's true. So it's like
My Lone Star.
they're mixing together.
What's your last one?
I've got a lot here that I could pick from. Well, this one's probably going to go best with the voters. I'm going with a 1963 Aston Martin DB5, James Bond's original car.
Yep, that's a great one. Had that one written down. That's a great one. I got the one from Goldfinger.
All right,
Yeah.
last pick for Dave.
All right, I've got several here that I'm going to definitely mention in the honorable mentions. But I tell you what, I'm looking at this like, what am I going to spend my last pick on? And I've decided that I am going to make my decision based on who I get to hang out with when I'm in this vehicle, because this one seats a lot of people.
Oh,
This is a bus, and it is painted like psychedelic hippie kind of vibe, right? This is the Electric Mayhem bus from the Muppet movie. And I'm bringing all of the Muppets with me.
Oh,
Nice.
that's a good choice. Never thought of that one.
I was thinking you were describing a different thing at first there.
I
Actually,
did too. I had a different one. I was going to mark you down for that I have on my list. I did not have that one on my list.
Okay.
Different. What's your last pick?
All right, this particular vehicle I absolutely loved. She's actually older than I am. Came out in 1970, but really splashed on the screen in 1986 and made a resurgence in 2022. That is the Grumman F-14 Tomcat from Top Gun.
Yes. Yes.
Didn't think of that one either.
She's a vehicle. She'll get you around. She'll get you from point A to point B.
All right. Well, the one I fucking thought Dave was picking was the Mystery Machine. So that's one of
That's
my
what I
honorable
thought.
mentions.
Okay.
But even before that, I'm on the same thing here. So my list, I'm just trying to have fun here and pick these things. So I'm going to pick something that's going to seat even more people. I'm going to have more fun. I'm going to be surrounded by celebrities and bikinis and beautiful people. And it's just going to be the greatest time. And I'm picking The Love Boat for my last pick.
Oh,
That's on my list.
that might do it.
Oh, thanks,
That
Jeff.
is sneaky, great last pick, Brad. That is
All right.
outstanding.
That's great.
Definitely.
Well, and as you were speaking of that one, I was thinking of another great vehicle from Dumb and Dumber. It'd be the bus that
The Hawaiian
Oh.
Tropic.
The
The-
Hawaiian Tropic Girl bus.
that would be,
That
if you
would be
want to
a
have
fun.
fun on a vehicle, that would be a
if we
hard.
take the passengers with us, like David
Yes.
did, yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling me that I blew past the Hawaiian Tropic Girls and I chose Gonzo and Scooter.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
you
the
saw
town
that
is
bus and you
that
told
way.
them, yes, you told them the town is back that way as you were getting back on the Muppet bus.
All right, let's have Dave tell us honorable mentions first. As our
Yes, Dave, you get to go first in your honorable mentions. What was not said that you wanted to put on your list?
What am I doing? One at a time here? I've got 3 or 4.
Yep.
So.
You go right
whatever
on
you have.
down your line.
Okay, I've got the Bluesmobile.
Yes.
Gotta have the Bluesmobile. I won't name everyone. I'm gonna leave stuff here, but some here. I'm gonna go with I think it's the Lotus from The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977, the James
Mhm.
Bond movie the car that goes underwater.
Underwater. Yep.
Yeah. I've got the Black Pearl on here,
Oh,
and,
Oh, good
Yeah.
pick.
and I have a soft spot for the motorcycle from the Captain America TV movies. With the transparent shield that doubled as the windshield for the motorcycle, and he kept it in his van, and he would jump out of the back of the van whenever it was time for action, and he could jump off a cliff in his motorcycle, and hang glider wings would come out. So, how can you turn that down?
Right.
Motorcycles, vans, and hang gliders. It hits all the key demos. And the only one else I'll throw out there. Let me see. I'll just say the Airwolf.
that's the.
like that.
I
You know
knew
what?
Gifford
I
was gonna
forgot
have
to
that
put it
one.
on my list, and I literally just got done writing it on my paper. As you said. That's excellent.
I've got more here, but I'll leave it for y'all. But yeah, I'm a huge Blues Brothers fan, and it has the ability to outrun Illinois Nazis, and it has the ability to jump off of an interstate ramp and skydive, and
Yep.
you still survive that. So I got to go with the Bluesmobile.
And it can redecorate them all. Yeah. Pete,
This was.
All right.
Why don't
yeah,
you go
get
next?
next.
Okay. I have Herbie the Love Bug.
Yeah, I got that.
I have this isn't an individual car, but it's basically the Mini Coopers from the Italian Job. That's a great movie and a great
The
use of
original or the
the
remake?
cars. The remake. I never watched the original.
Okay.
The A-Team van.
Yes.
The Orca, the boat from Jaws.
Oh, I did not have the.
You had Optimus Prime, which I had also, but I also had Bumblebee.
Mhm.
From Transformers. I had the Homer from The Simpsons, the Homer Simpson car that he designed. The Homer.
Thought about the Mr. Plow, snow plow.
And
Oh,
I
sure.
had my last one I just want to get real quickly, was Pee Wee Herman's bike in Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
I got that one too.
That's my list.
Gifford, you were next in the draft, so you go next.
Oh God. Okay, buckle up. Literally.
Let's want me to go first.
Why don't you go first? I've got quite a few that have not been
I don't
mentioned.
have too many here. I got the Camaro from Better Off Dead. That's one of my favorite movies, and when they get that thing going, he's at Dodger Stadium at the end. That's awesome. I got the Aero car from the Jetsons. Who wouldn't want a flying car? I
Yep.
got the 66 Ford Thunderbird from Thelma and Louise.
Mm-hmm.
Magnum PI's Ferrari.
Oh, good one.
I mentioned Smokey and the Bandit earlier, the Trans Am.
I can't believe that didn't get picked.
I know, I thought that'd get picked. The AMC Pacer from Wayne's World.
Yep.
The Little Miss Sunshine, 1971 Volkswagen Microbus. I got the Chrysler LeBaron, 1983 from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, I didn't write that.
And that's it. Everybody else has been named.
All right.
I want to jump in with one more before you get started.
Yep. You go ahead.
I don't know how familiar y'all are with the Batman 66 TV show.
I used
But
to watch
they
it in the
did
afternoons.
they did a theatrical movie that had all the bad guys in the movie at once, and that was actually used to sell the show to European markets. But there's a 1966 Batman movie, and in that movie, the Penguin has a submarine that looks like a giant penguin, and it goes through the water with these giant penguin feet that paddle the subway through the water. So, the submarine through the water. So
I remember that. I know.
I'm
what you're
taking the
talking about.
Penguin submarine.
That's a good one.
Okay, Giff, finish it up.
All right. I got the Big Boy Rocket and Austin Powers. The Flintstones Mobile. You said Airwolf. I got Blue Thunder. The Deathmobile, the 64 Lincoln Continental from Animal House. 69 Dodge Challenger Daytona from Joe Dirt. Cannonball Run, the 1979 Lamborghini Countach. That is an all-timer. From Gone in 60 Seconds, Eleanor, the Shelby Mustang GT 500. John Wick's 69 Mustang Mach 1. In Tommy Boy, we had the 67 Plymouth Belvedere GTX. We mentioned the Mystery Mobile. I've got from Kill Bill Volume 1, 1997 Chevy 250 Silverado Pussy Wagon. And to round it off from the 1975 Dodge Trademan from Napoleon Dynamite, Uncle Rico's orange van is
It's a great one.
Well done. Well done.
Well, and you brought up bikes and jumps earlier. Pedro's sweet bike that, you know, too many sweet jumps. That'd be a good one too.
What does he say? It's oh crap, what is it
I
called?
don't remember. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the line.
God, he says it so well. Yeah.
I can picture him missing the jump though and landing on his crotch. So funny.
Cold. Oh,
Hey, Gifford.
hey, what?
What do you know what band is
Well,
playing
let's
this week?
thank our guests.
Oh, yes,
before we
thank
finish
you.
this
Yeah,
out.
Sorry.
Dave, you came, you offered a ton of great perspective. You were a wonderful guest, and I'd love to have you back sometime. That was way fun.
Hey guys, great to meet y'all. Great hanging out with y'all. This was great. We just fell right in. I loved it. I just appreciate the opportunity. I kind of invited myself. I was like, Dukes of Hazzard. I can't like just keep my mouth shut. Y'all doing Dukes of Hazzard. Hey,
on your show.
you know, so
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
thanks for
way
having me.
more fun than Brad and Gifford are.
sure. I
for sure.
second that. And if we can get a native Georgian to talk Dukes of Hazzard, I mean, how
Yes.
much better can you get?
What are we doing next week? What kind of guests do we want next week?
Oh yeah, what are we doing next week? What do we got? That's
It would be yours, Gifford. What'd you pick?
are we doing Fast
Oh,
Times?
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
We got
can't wait for that one.
Speaking of red bikinis.
Yeah.
two
Yes.
weeks ago,
It's Bikini Month this month.
All right, all right, do a red bikini draft. It might not
You got
last
Bugs
very
Bunny
long,
dressing
but
up like girls. You got Daisy Duke, and you got the greatest scene in the history of film.
you've got the Phoebe Cates.
Yes.
yes, for people of our age, for sure, that is a top notch scene for sure.
All right. Well, thanks
right.
again, Dave. And Pete, now you can do your
Thank
thing.
you. Hey, Gifford,
Yes, sir.
do you know what band is performing this weekend at the Boar's Nest in their Daisy Dukes?
That is Preacher Row. They got top billing in that.
Can't wait. I can't
concert.
wait. I'm looking forward to them. All right,
Absolutely.
Boar's Nest Friday, 7 p.m. Be there.
Be there. Yeehaw!
to fear. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Hands tied, tell me on my back. Heart down and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.